This meeting is being recorded.
Welcome to 144,000teachers.org, and now we will be looking at the extra curriculum self-representation, which can be obtained in the menu by clicking on 144,000 teachers and bypass the first 7 methods and click on extra curriculum. And then you will obtain an entry, and then you will see here to choose between the PowerPoints or the PDF. And since we have already submitted the PowerPoint, we will enter now the PDF together. And this, again, we will bypass, as you have seen the video on this. We will not read it again. We just want to bring you to some important points. And if you care about listening to it again, to make sure you understand fully what this is all about, well, we believe that definitely there is a time that is coming where we will be losing our freedom. This is presented through the Bible in the book of Revelation, specifically chapter 13. And of course, we have the writing of the Spirit of Prophecy that is guiding us through that. And it's important to study this particular material here, the principle of religious liberty, explanation of principle, argument and responses, and all the answers can be found here to the PDF. You simply have to click and you will end up at Four Winds Publications, which is another of our website, and you will get again argument and responses, application of principles, understanding the arguments, and the warning against the New World religion. So this again is part of the training, and at the same time it's not something that you have to learn by heart. You need to understand it. This is much more important. As well, we have some small short video that we submit to you. The voice might need a good speaker, but it's still definitely material of value. And it has to do with charged with the crime of being a Christian. We have not felt that in certain countries of the world, but some countries of the world have gone through that for a long time now. And they have had to learn to deal with this. What happened when you will be charged to be a Christian? There is a quote actually that says, if you were charged of the crime of being a Christian, would there be enough evidence to basically accuse you of it, to charge you with it? So this is very important to be able to say, yes, I hope there is enough proof that I'm a Christian. You don't want to hide from that. But at the same time, we need to be prepared. Under a New World Order religion, what would you do? Court evidences against you, giving the right answer, and there are the complete study, which are much more than the 58 videos are not just on that subject. It covers many more subjects. Again, we encourage you to watch them and again, take into consideration that they were made quite a long time ago, and it looks like YouTube has changed quite a bit as far as they have better quality as well, but they're still very valuable. So here we have also Religious Liberty Self-Representation Certificate. How to represent yourself in court, very highly recommended. Now, here are the fill-up of the forms and the form to use in court. Well, this may not be necessarily something you can use in your country because it was prepared for Canada. Your court date, but they're very similar usually. Common language, and some people may think the legal terms as well. Many people do not understand that there is a time that is coming that Christian will not be able to hire a lawyer to help them. And in many countries around the world now, you can be self-represented. It's called self-represented litigants in the court of law. And I am from Canada, and in Canada, it's quite open. The courts will allow that. You don't need to hire a lawyer and spend a lot of money. Sometimes it's not an investment, I must say. But if you have a knowledge, a basic knowledge of what to do in case you have this, having to do that to represent yourself, this is very important. So this is what we're presenting here in this particular research. And in the video that you saw, there was also some very important information which we have in PDF form, which we would like to share with you at this moment. And it's actually called Basics to Represent Yourself in Court. You don't see that through the video. You have to go to the PDF to click on it and open all these files. They're very large files. They were prepared in 2018. And again, it's for self-represented people. And the common law jurisdiction are pretty well the same in North America, in the UK, and elsewhere. So you may still want to take time to look at it, and especially listening to the video that we have. This part of the video, I believe it was presented. Yes, in the video it is presented this. But I will bypass the judicial system in Canada because we're dealing here with another country. However, you still want to know as much as possible of your own jurisdiction. The point is that if ever and whenever you are to represent God and you are to stand in the court of law for your faith, and this is actually prophesied in the Bible in Matthew 24 and other places in the Bible, the Lord is clear that we are not to prepare what we're going to say. But Mrs. White also says that because we will have prepared beforehand. So people are expecting, it's like an exam. You're going to pass an exam in college or whatever at school, and you don't study because the Lord will tell you the answers. Well, it doesn't work quite like that. So when the Bible says we are not to prepare when we are to be presented before the magistrate or the judges, it means simply that at that time the Lord will, and it says that in the Word of God, the Lord through the Holy Spirit will bring it back to remembrance. Then that's what it says. He will bring it back to your memory. So in the meantime, that's why you have to prepare. So again, here in Canada, we have a Supreme Court and we have different functions for it. And so you may want to look at it. I have no comparison. I'm sorry. I have never studied the African and if it's anything like everywhere else, every country has different system. They're similar, but they're different. So the point is, if you ever were charged at the time of the very end for having breaking the law of the land and wanting to stand for your rights as far as religious liberty and freedom of conscience, from what we have seen here, and especially at the very, very last time, and if you're charged at the level of international courts, you will have to be charged and you will have to be judged under the United Nations. And this is quite interesting. I really recommend that you go through this again, because though the United Nations was established, the World Court of the United Nations was established in 1945. To doing this research, I'm going to try to increase the wording. Sometimes I forget, and I hope that you can enlarge on your computer when you're watching this. But basically, you will discover something absolutely interesting. My research brought me to this. I have mentioned it earlier in some other presentation. I am a self-represented litigant. It's usually used under the acronym SELF, S, represented R, litigant L. That's how the court knows you, SRL. Because I have worked in prisons and I have worked with young people, sometimes trying to bail them out. And I've also worked with people who were going through a divorce and then with family situation. It's not a pleasant thing to find yourself in the court of law, but if it has to be, it has to be. And you have to be prepared. You may not need to be, but some people will. At the time of the end, there will be people who will definitely answer for their fate in the court of law. Myself, personally, I've been many, many times in the court of law, mostly for other people, thank God, but it's a very impressive system. At the same time, sometimes it's probably not very well organized, and I'm not going to judge. I'm not going to say anything. It's just a statement of fact for the moment. I'm not naming any. In Canada, we have provinces, so we have 10 provinces. And I've had opportunities, I call it opportunity, to live in different provinces in Canada and gone to the courts of law for certain cases. And sometimes it's incredible that they're running a court of law. And this is not a criticism, it's a statement of fact. I don't know in Africa, I hope it's better organized. Sometimes you feel that you're just a file in the system. And trying individual now in the case of genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and aggression, that will go under the International Criminal Court. And of course, you don't want to be caught in any of those, but just in case, what you need to know is that the United Nations International Court is found in The Hague or La Hague in the Netherlands, which is in Europe. So which means that if you're charged in your country, you can still end up in Europe. Now, who's going to pay the expense? That's another question. Now, this is a statute, the adoption of the Roman statute. You can see that it's under the United Nations, is under Rome. Absolutely. The United Nations, if you do not know that, it's under the Rome Covenant. That's how it's called. It's totally set up under the Vatican. So the adoption of the Rome statute or the Roman statute in 1998, it's not very far away. We're not talking 1945 after the Second World War now. Listen to these two paragraphs. The adoption of the Rome Statute in 1998 was an historic step, reflecting the determination of the world community to put an end to impunity and to contribute to the prevention of crimes which threaten the peace, security, and well-being of the world. This sentence in the court of law leaves a lot of space to judges and lawyers to charge you. Prevention of crimes which threaten the peace. What kind of a crime? Nowadays, everything can be a crime. This is very important. And the ICC, which is the International Criminal Court, has jurisdiction over the most serious crimes of concern to the international community: genocide, crimes against humanity, war crime, committed after the 1st of July 2002. And we give you here the link where you will find those information if you care checking it out. This is true. And it's very young. 2002 in the Court of Justice is very young. This is not for Canada. This is research that were done on the internet, up to date. And this was done in 2018, so it's not an old research either. So, this is what is happening. While deciding the case, the ICC applies the principles of international law. It also uses the laws of the civilized world. This may be the civil and criminal law of major countries. It may also refer to legal writings, law books, earlier decisions while deciding any matter. Again, we encourage you to check those videos. They're very, very important. And basically, those conclusions were drawn from these videos and this research. So we need to be intelligent here. There is another court of law as well, which is called the United Nations Human Rights Council. This is probably where we're going to end up, some of us. UNHRC, which stands for the United Nations Human Rights Council. This is the United Nations system intergovernmental body responsible for strengthening the promotion and protection of human rights around the world. Its 47 seats are filled by member states elected for 3-year terms. So the UNHRC, you probably heard about the United Nations Commission on Human Rights. The UNHRC is replacing that commission, UNCHR. So now it's subsidiary body of the United Nations General Assembly, and the Council works closely with the Office of the High Commissioner for the Human Rights, OHCHR, and engages the United Nations Special Procedure. Now, what does it address? It addresses human rights related situation in all the United Nations member states. So Canada and Africa, they are part of the United Nations. We give you also a referral on that, how many nations there is right now in the world and which countries are under those. There are not that many nations, 195 dimension, plus some subsidiary like some country like Puerto Rico, for example. It's not a country. It belongs to the United States, although it's an island, and countries like that. So the UNHRC, now you know what it is. It's the replacement of the UN Commission on Human Rights. This one is the United Nations Human Rights Council. They address also important thematic human rights issues such as freedom of association and assembly, freedom of expression, freedom of belief and religion, women's rights, LGBT rights, and the rights of racial and ethnic minorities. Now, when you continue to read these terminology, read it carefully because there are definitely some paragraphs that are very interesting. And one of them, I'm pointing it out here, it's the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. And paragraph 48 states, I read the whole commission. I wanted to know what it was all about to prepare this manuscript. Prohibition, listen to this very interestingly what it means, and it can have a double meaning depending which side you come from. This prohibits you, in paragraph 48, of display of lack of respect for religion or other belief system, including blasphemy laws, which are incompatible with the covenant, except in the specific circumstances envisaged in Article 20, paragraph 2 of the covenant. Such a prohibition must also comply with the strict requirement of Article 19, paragraph 3, as well as such articles as 2, 5, 17, 18, and 26. Now, this is not what I wanted to draw your attention. These are basically legality of numbers and all that. But thus, for instance, it would be impermissible for any such a law to discriminate in favor or against one or certain religions or belief system or their adherents over another, or religious believers over non-believers. Nor would it be permissible for such a prohibition to be used to prevent or punish criticism of religious leaders or commentary on religious doctrine and tenets of faith. Now, it's very, very interesting because when you read it, on one hand, it's impermissible, and on the other hand, it's permissible, and you've got to make sense into this. This is impermissible for any such a law to discriminate in favor or against of any certain religion or belief or their adherent. And then again, or believers and non-believer, but nor would it be permissible for such a prohibition to be used to prevent or punish criticism of religious leader. I'm telling you, you need a lawyer to basically try to understand this, because it's almost like what they call in English an oxymoron, which means like one is kind of contradictory to the other, but they can still be used in the same sentence, which is very interesting. So we need to study more of this, because this is under the United Nations. You're going to be going to court to La Hague in the Netherlands to defend your right because you believe your rights have been now dismissed. And you come with this vocabulary like this, you need to know what you're talking about. The same with the covenant. It says in paragraph 2 of Article 20, any advocacy of national, racial, or religious hatred that constitute incitement to discrimination, hostility, or violence shall be prohibited by law. Now, again, it leaves a lot of doors open to judge what is the incitement to discrimination, hostility. What did I do wrong? Where is it? And you know, at the time of the end, not too many people will want to hear from us. So myself, personally, I take it very seriously. I have been in the court of law for many, many years. And it was not by choice. I just happened to have people who did not know nothing about courts. And I started going in the 80s and even in the 70s. And I'm accustomed to be in the court of law. And there is a protocol and there is a dress code. I don't know in Africa, but in Canada, they're very strict about that. And I'm sure the international courts are even more strict. I don't want to scare you or discourage you, but I know some of us will be called to answer for our faith, and we may end up in the Netherlands, in Europe, to answer for our faith. So I do encourage you greatly to study this material, because it's definitely full of beautiful information at the same time to get us ready. But accordingly, though, there are definitely some contradictions that we need to be standing against if we have to. Doesn't mean we're going to win. Obviously not. But to stand in defense of the truth when the majority forsake us, this will be our work. And this is also when Mrs. White says, that's when the champion shall be few. That comes from the church, the messages to the church, and it has to do with volume 5. So it's very important. Testimony to the church, it's called. And human rights are rights inherent to all human beings. It sounds very good. I mean, when you read it, you're like, wow, this is the United Nations protecting my right. Human rights are rights inherent to all human beings, whatever the nationality, place of residence, sex, national or ethnic origin, color, religion, language, or any other statute. All are equally entitled to their human rights without discrimination. These rights are all interrelated, interdependent, and visible. And then, again, they come back to the law, to the guaranteed by law. Your human rights are guaranteed by law universally. And it sounds like the universal law of God, but in a minute, I will show you a reverse of this. International human right lays down obligation of government to act in certain ways or to refrain from certain acts in order to promote and protect human rights and fundamental freedoms of individual or groups. Another thing you need to know too, we were blessed in the 1980s. Some of you were not even born. When I came to this church, because I was not always a Seventh-day Adventist, I'm a convert to Seventh-day Adventism, and I do regard the Seventh-day Adventist church very highly. I'm talking about the teaching, because you know the church is not a building or an organization. The church is not even the leadership. It's not even the members. A church is composed of members, but it's their tenets of faith that declare who they are. And as far as I know of different churches, I have never been into another religion than Christianity, but I have been in other denominations. And I really, really highly respect the Seventh-day Adventist teaching, especially the Bible combined and the spirit of prophecy. And of course, we have in the church many knowledgeable people. And I was very blessed in the 1980s. I took my training as a religious liberty representative for my church, and I have been able to speak in the court of laws and against legislation of provincial government in my country. And I really believe it has given me a good experience in facing courts and recognizing that there is a protocol. There is definitely a way to approach. The wording is different. They have their own wordings. And if you're not accustomed to it, you feel like a stranger. But that's the way it is with every profession. So we need to definitely train professional. And I'm very thankful for the training. I went as far as, I think I went at least until 2008 to some training that they were giving in Washington, D.C. for religious liberty. And it was very fascinating. We met a lot of interesting people from politics and also people who were involved with genocide and people who told us a lot about, especially the Rwanda genocide at the time. And it was very interesting. And unhappily, we have had some of our own members who were involved into that and not in the right way. So they may have ended up in the Netherlands for all you know. So here we have the rights. Our rights are universal, inalienable. So that sounds very much like the principle of the universal law of God. Praise the Lord for that. But there is a change of spirit. And again, this was declared in the 1940s. And now there is some change with the criminal court. And it's not that old in the 2000 era, as I just showed you. So basically, this is why I do encourage you. It seems like it's long. You may want to gather in a group and study all this. We did a video to read this for you, which you saw. It was presented. But it's still a matter we need to study carefully. What is that all about? So now, this is where we want to show you something very important. Who wrote the United Nations Human Rights? Judges 21:25 says, every man did that which was right in his own eyes. Now, these are partly taken from different writing, but it's my own research. And if you do not believe it, I have given all the link for it. I'm a researcher by profession. I studied industrial chemistry in the 60s, graduated and worked for a number of years in chemistry and research. So the principle applies in every sciences. And when I do a research, I have learned to give every references, which I do. You can see it even here. All the references are given. And it's amazing what you discover when you search. We live at a time where there are extremely high level information. Some you have to glean through, but some are very, very valuable. And this is where I want to show you the other side of the medal as far as our rights under the United Nations. And I'm sure when we're finished to read this, you will see that you wish that we didn't have to go to the United Nations. The principle of non-discrimination is complemented by the principle of equality as stated in Article 1 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. So far, so good. We begin with all human beings, which brings in the significant principle of universality, which is closely related to synthesis. Both energy are distinctive of the Aquarian age. Do you see the change of language here? And I am not into that form of a language. It's just a discovery I made by researching the United Nations. One way, and maybe some of you knew it, when I did that research in 2018, I believe it's signed, I was quite surprised of discovering so much new age in here. And I'm going to continue here for a few minutes because I intended to do the video, to present you the video, and now I'm preparing an explanation of the video, if you will. All right, and this I have all the reference from what I'm reading here. It says, one way of capturing the key insights of universality and equality that lie at the heart of the first article is summed up in a concept that Alice Bailey said should be taught to every child, namely the value of the individual and the fact of the one humanity. Well, so far in this paragraph alone, I can see at least two red lights. The Aquarian age and the one humanity. This is not the language that you have to trust that it is Christian. Listen why. Listen to why. Who was Alice Bailey? Well, I did a research on that. I knew about it, but I wanted to bring some connection with United Nations. She's an occultist, and she passed away now. But the United Nations was founded by the occult and has a flat Earth map on their official logo. If you do not believe that, check the logo because this is where they come from. The people who believe in the flat Earth. I don't. As a scientist, I don't believe in the flat Earth. That's not my opinion. It's a fact. It's a statement of fact. The United Nations was founded by the occult and has a flat Earth map on their official logo. There is a satanic library inside the United Nations building called Lucis Trust. It was founded by Alice Bailey, who was a New Age occultist. This is in New York City in United States. The title page of Alice Bailey's book, Initiation, Human and Solar, was originally printed in 1922. And clearly shows the publishing house as Lucifer Publishing, Cone, 1923. Bailey changed the name to Lucis Trust because Lucifer Publishing revealed the true nature of the New Age movement too clearly. And Lucis Trust still exists today in New York City. And they're the publisher of the United Nations. Now, this is a worst case scenario. Don't worry, it may never happen to you. And this is what we do in this training. We do a lot of court. I have done court scenario for years and years and years. I have done it in Okinawa. I have done it. The Japanese, they're scared to death about this. They could not sleep that night because after we finished the training, we went on for 40 days of very, very concentrated training with those 70 Adventist young people. I was invited by a pastor. We had met in California and he wanted me to teach them. So I did 45 days. I did the sanctuary, the health message, the prophecy. I always follow the curriculum of Numbers 1317, which you will see this week. But this is the worst case scenario that I like to prepare. I give the material and then I'm the judge. And I question the people on their knowledge. And people are scared to death because they're afraid of, and I'm not a very, very, goody-goody judge. People have to answer the question. Otherwise, they can also be charged of contempt of court. And they have to answer properly because their case can be dismissed. And the court is like that. The court can dismiss your case because of just the words you use that are not proper. So it's not easy to be a self-represented litigant. And at times, especially when lawyers and judges talk to each other, you feel like you're the alien because they do make you feel like that. It's their language. They're professional and they want you to feel like you're not. So this is a worst case scenario in case you end up under the international Sunday law when it's enforced. It has not been enforced yet. It's not even declared yet. But you are charged here, take it personally, by the International Court, ICC, and the United Nations International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, ICCPR. And in court, they won't repeat all the time the International Criminal Court. They'll say ICC, ICCPR, and you get used to that. Under paragraph 48, this is a charge that I have prepared for you, which states, prohibition of display of lack of respect for religion or other belief system, including blasphemy laws, are incompatible with the covenant, except in the specific circumstance envisaged in Article 20, paragraph 2 of the covenant, which I just read, and you're being charged against that. You have broken this particular, this specific article, number 20, paragraph 2, and also the strict requirement of Article 19, paragraph 3. And then in the court of law, which I make a scenario of it, I also continue to read, this is your charge, so that's what you would be charged with. And then now you have to prepare yourself. How are you going to answer to this accusation? And when you come back to the court, you've got to follow what we're giving you here to use. And it has a lot of preparation. We definitely recommend the dress code. There is a rule in the court of law, both provincial and federal in Canada. If you go to the court and you have a coat on top of your clothes, sometimes it's winter, it's cold, so you'll bring a jacket or something, you're not allowed to put that jacket on the back of your seat. The judge cannot see any of that. You're thirsty, you want some water, you're not allowed to bring that water in that bottle of water in the court, in that room. You've got to have a glass. You cannot drink it from the bottle. There is a lot of rules. I don't know in Africa, but you may want to inform yourself. Myself, I didn't have to just go and see the courts because I accompanied some people and mainly friends. And like I said, young people that I was working with in prison as a volunteer with my Way of Life program at the request of the government. And basically, I offered a couple of them to accompany them in the courts of law. And they tried to be bailed out, but we didn't bail them out. And basically, I saw the protocol at different level of court, not just the criminal court, but also family courts and for divorce and all that. So it's if the church were observing reverence to God the same way that they observe in the court of law for the judge, we would have a magnificent service. This is just a statement of fact. But this is what they say here too. This is what you expect to bring when you go to court. You will not be able to make an application one day and get an order the next day. Expect to come to court multiple times. I can guarantee you it's the truth. The more complex and adversarial your case is, the more time you will spend in court. And the thing is, too, with the court, you may not have realized that you always need copies. One copy for the judge, one copy for, if you don't have a lawyer, you're fine, but you're becoming the lawyer. So you need a copy for yourself, a copy if you're charged, if you're the respondent, if you always want to be the applicant because it's much easier. But if you're the respondent, that will require a lot of material. You have to answer to every application that is sent to you. And it's very expensive. It can become very expensive, even as a self-represented litigant. So let's continue. And this is an overall. We won't spend too much time here because we want to do more during this week. We will prolong this in order for you to see everything that's involved in the court of law. It's part of the session that we will do every day for the next days of your training here. And it's quite important. And I'm sure the terminology everywhere around the world, you're talking about an application, you're talking about an answer for the defense, an affidavit, an order. This is the terminology you need to be acquainted with. And if I had a capacity, I would like to make us all, at least if not specialists, but very knowledgeable so that we come to this point, the Lord will have well-trained people. And this is done, this was actually all acquired through lawyers. We had to pay for this, the corporation, we paid for this material, and we asked them specifically what we were looking for. And basically they supplied the material. So myself personally, I put this PowerPoint together, all the PowerPoint on this website, I put them together all the time. But this was very fascinating to set that up. And again, some of them you will notice, for example, here that would not be applicable in all the country. This is a provincial form. That's the form 4B. That's an application form. But once you know those forms, you always use the same. So it's not so bad. But this is the Ontario Superior Court of Justice. And if you're the applicant, this is where your name goes. And these forms now with the computer are very simple. You just have a good PDF program and you can enter all this with your computer. It doesn't take that long. So, and these forms sometimes looks old, like 2012, but for the court of law, these are the recent court of law. I mean, the paper forms. So, and you can see I give all the PDF. You can check them out if you like. They connect you directly to the courts. And, there is definitely a lot of material involved. You can end up with a big portfolio. And the secret too is you have to be very orderly because you don't come to the court and your paper goes all over and it doesn't work in the court of law. So, and the judge will judge you on that. And they will judge you the way you dress, and they will judge you the way you speak, and they will judge also your countenance. They judge everything. And sometimes you judge before they judge you, so you know that already. So I do recommend that you take time to look at this. And if some of you are really, really interested, keep on coming to the training, and you will see that for some of you, you may have already received that one day you will speak in the court of law. Myself, as I said, I have been involved with the court of law, and sometimes it has not been my choice personally. But most of the time it's to accompany people because they don't have money. They don't have, usually when I went to court, especially in the 70s, I had lawyers, but I have learned that you can represent yourself now. That's a long time ago, 40 years later, 50 years later, and it's much less costly, but it's very demanding a lot of times because you have to serve your own manuscript to the court, your affidavit, your application, everything. You have to always bring that to the court and file them. It's called a file. And that file you're building up, and then when the case comes, it could last 5 minutes in the court of law, and it has taken you 8 months or 10 months or a year to prepare. And that's what the courts are. And sometimes your case could be postponed, and there's all kind of things that can happen. So it's a good experience. I like having experience in many fields. So this is my own manuscript that I was able to use when I went to the courts for a recent case, actually a family court case. And did I win? No, because I basically I didn't get dismissed. I just canceled the case, and because they were going to bring it up to a higher level of court. And I think I took it also. I went ahead with it. It was personal, but I went ahead with it to learn, because you cannot just teach it without doing it. And I had an opportunity to do it. It was not pleasant, but I did it, and it lasted about 8 months. It cost quite a bit of money, but I take it as if I had to go to university, it would have cost me more. I am not a lawyer, but I love the courts. I love governments. I have been in municipal level as a town councillor, and I've also worked in legislation, against legislation, and got them declared non-constitutional. Thank God for the training I had from the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Very advanced training. And and we won. We got declared that law. It was a Sunday law that they were trying to impose in Ontario under a Retail Business Holiday Act at the end of the 1980s. And because of my training, I ended up the last one. At the end, it lasted 3 years. So everybody had abandoned. And I was the only one practically against it with another gentleman, he was not an Adventist. And basically, it was declared non-constitutional. And I have the file in my portfolio of numbers 1317. And I used the same terminology of A.T. Jones in 1888, 1889 against Senator Blair in 1889. I use the same term. I know his book. I have read his book many times. I use the same premises, and it was declared non-constitutional because of that. So you may want to look at this. We're going to look at this together this week. So may the Lord bless you. This is a short presentation to give you an idea of what is coming. And the Heavenly Father will need people rightly trained to speak in the court of law. And I felt impressed a few years ago. For a long time now, I have manuscript and materials. So I put this portfolio together. And I'm hoping that some of you will be interested and take heed, because God will need some very, very professional people at the time of the end. And this is pretty specialized if we end up at the United Nations. So I'm the type of a person, I'm going to try to present myself the best I can for the Lord, and I want to look professional. And this is the role I play with this way of life, which I have had the honor to set up since 1981. And it has progressed ever since. And I really believe someday we will have to answer in the court of law. And I would like to see some people representing the Lord and having faith that they know their material and they will be able to at least, if not win the case, like Martin Luther, he was able through his testimony, and the whole court of the Prince of Germany, they basically are the one who wrote the Protestant creed. So that tells you in history, and he was a monk. So in history, God will have a lot of people that he will use. So you can see I'm scrolling while I'm talking because there's so much to study in this file, so much material. And I have prepared all this. I have done all the font and everything. So I had to prepare, read, and see if the material was worth it. It's hard to actually cut it off because there is so much good material. And these arguments basically is what you can expect in the court of law. All right. Like I have an argument here, a sample fact, which we'll look at it tomorrow at the next session. The argument number 3, I set that up, and it's directly concerning the Bible, the biblical calendar. This is an accusation. I pretend I'm accused, and then I bring my argument to counteract it. So you can see the way I prepared it. So I will be teaching that this week on how to stand for your faith, and when the accusation comes, which argument you could present. And if you don't agree with it, that's fine too. That will be interesting to hear. And if you have any question, you may want to even write them down, and they can be emailed to me in Canada because I'm in Canada, and I will be really glad to answer you back. So just write it down, and the email you can ask at Brother Amos there and the gentleman they're using. I like when we use the one that I use often is 144,000teacher@gmail.com. This one is the official one for the website. So may the Lord bless you and cause his face to shine upon you and give you peace until we meet again at the next session.